As James cracks his water bottle, takes a sip, looks at me in disappointment, Nick disappears from the screen. Welcome back to Clear the Air, the Simply Stogies after show, one of your favorite after shows that's cigar related that you can even watch today. I'm your host, Tim, and with me, as always, because there's some contract out there that nobody remembers signing, and that's James and Nick. I'm going to start with you, James. How you doing? What you smoking?
Well, obviously, I'm extremely disappointed in you for that open.
So if you don't
terrible.
write me a script that I can't read from, it's never going to be.
We don't
to
do
your
You
scripts.
can't read.
Yeah,
You
you're
can't
right.
read.
I absolutely cannot.
Never learned to read. I'm doing well, Tim. Thanks for asking. Thanks for having us back for another episode of Clear the Air, a Simply Stogies after show.
Yeah.
Where today we're going to be talking about Nimmer Ahmad. We're talking about him behind his back, which is great because I'm smoking. Thanks for asking. The brand new Astronomia from Valacari Cigars.
Ooh, does that have the new band on it too?
No, it doesn't.
Oh.
This is one that I picked up. I bought a pack during the launch party for the Astronomia at Fuma Cigar Social all the way back in July. But you can check that footage out because come hell or high water, at this point, that footage is out. And we've been just kind of sitting on it for Valacari and for Nimmer. But I would imagine that's out now. You can check that out on YouTube. I'm sure that when Tim does this, there'll be a link down there in the description on YouTube and on Podbean and everywhere else. Just making more work for Tim, as this is his show and his shindig. But yeah, this is well, I'm sure we're going to talk about the Astronomia. But that's what I'm smoking right now. Connecticut Broadleaf, first cigar of the day. It's fucking tasty.
Oh my God, this is your first cigar of the day.
At this time of night?
Yeah, well, and I'm getting ready to go to Rocky Mountain Cigar Fest and have a good time out there. Just we're not covering it. Like, you can check the Instagram if you want and kind of follow along when I tell you whether or not the executive VIP is worth it this year. But that's what I'm doing. Like, it's just a lot of. I've just been very busy today, so this is my first cigar of the day, and I'm absolutely digging it.
Well, and then there's the man, the myth, the legend, the one who has probably had at least 2 or 3 cigars today. Nick, how you doing? How many cigars have you had today?
You're correct. This is my third.
Oh, it's almost like I'm spying on you.
Yeah, almost. Not quite.
What are you up to?
Creepy, Tim.
Creepy Tim. Talking about spying, don't we have enough people spying on people these days? I've been watching a lot of the Y Files, man. Holy shit, I don't want to like put out a plug, but I'm telling you, that is the craziest. That's the best conspiracy theory show on YouTube today. It's stupid and it's good at the same time. That's my plug of the day. Okay.
You've
been watching some vidges.
Yeah.
That's a resounding fucking, like, if you need a plug, if you need something plugged, like, Nick's the guy to go to.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it is simultaneously the greatest conspiracy show on YouTube. It's also kind of dumb.
Yeah, that's a great.
Like, that should just be their tagline.
Well, the dumb part, I didn't want to get into it, but the dumb part is he's got this little goldfish that he talks to called Hecklefish, and that is very dumb and stupid, and I wish it wasn't part of the show, but if you take that away, the content is fascinating. And the way the guy hears it, maybe there's a better plug. And then at the end, the guy debunks like 99% of everything, but while you're listening to it, you're going, holy shit, and then most of it is bullshit, as usual with most of these things. So that's why it's good and bad, if you must know.
I would love to have Dion from Illusione on the show and just talk nothing but conspiracy theories. Like, that's a
fun
bucket list for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never spoken to him. That would be
I don't
interesting
think I have either.
because I love that shit.
Yeah,
now it's my new thing.
Yeah, I would love to talk about aliens. And
it's a new podcast
Yetis.
You could do, James. Put that on your list.
I want to get him. Well, I need a fish. Apparently, I need a fish that is.
Well, you got Tim. So
I was going to say, well, now I know why you call me Hecklefish.
Well, yeah, there it is.
Before we get into this episode, I think we have some sponsors we need to talk about, James.
I'm fairly confident it's not the Wi-Fi's at this point.
No.
But
we might advertise now. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Maybe
Info at simplystogies.com.
Yeah, if you're interested, Hecklefish, let us know. Look, we do have a couple sponsors in this episode of Clear the Air, Simply Stogies after show. It is brought to you by Lure Cigars. I almost said Valacari Cigars. Lure Cigars, distributed by Valacari. But Lure Cigars, look, they've got a brand new cigar out as well. It's called the Mean Gene. It's a Habano variant from his Habano line, but here's what makes it special. Yes, it's trunk pressed. Yes, it's a little more oomph. Why has it got a little more oomph in it? It's because it's double Ometepe. Ometepe in the binder and Ometepe in the filler, and it's absolutely amazing. If you haven't tried the Mean Gene, go to your local B&M, go to your tobacconist, go to your cigar retailer of choice, and tell them to carry Lure Cigars. You've got to get them in your shop. I'm telling you, whether it's the Mean Gene, the Little Tony, the Big Lou, the Tally Alley, the Holy Coley, the Last Cast, his LE, which is now gone, or maybe it's one of these catch and releases that he's got coming out. The Speckled Perch is all gone. But there might be something special coming down the pipe. It doesn't matter what it is. He's got something for everyone. Lure Cigars, Lou Cross the Third, putting out the Mean Gene. Go try it. Double Ometepe. It's one of my favorite cigars. And you know what? You can check out my review of it at simplystogies.com, and just you'll be able to see how much I really like that cigar. So Lure Cigars, check them out. Tall Tales smoke great cigars. Lure Cigars. This episode is also brought to you by our exclusive online retail partner, smallbatchcigar.com. Smallbatchcigar.com carries something for everyone. They carry all kinds of brands. They support small boutique brands like they support small boutique podcasts like us. And Tim, I know I've asked you this before, but have you ever been sitting in a lounge and let's just say you're smoking a Valacari, or you see someone else smoking a Valacari and you're smoking whatever shit stick it is that you're smoking. And you're like, man, where'd you get that? Because that looks amazing. Does it happen to you?
Every time.
Every time.
You can't even imagine the shit I smoke. Yeah.
Right. It's like Davidoff, Valacari, Matilda, all kinds of different Curavari, just things that you can't find sometimes at like regular B&Ms, right?
Why is that so funny, Tim?
Yeah, because Tim, that's Tim. That's why Tim doesn't shop at Small Batch, because he always gets outshone by everyone else in the lounge who's smoking good stuff. And they get it where? Smallbatchcigar.com. That's where they get it. So if you want to show out every time you go to a lounge, go to smallbatchcigar.com, order your cigars there, and then take them into a lounge. And specifically a lounge where Tim's at, and be like, what are you smoking, Tim? And he'll be like, oh, I'm smoking this Burka. Rhymes with it.
I've got this Potomac.
Yeah, he got the Potomac. And then they'll be like, oh, that's sad. You don't shop at smallbatchcigar.com. Smallbatchcigar.com. Use code Stogies, 10% off your order, and a bonus 5%. Always free shipping, but the bonus 5% reward points. Bank them up. Christmas in September, as the case may be. It's coming up, and your spouse is going to fuck it up. So get what you want. Buy now, save later. Smallbatchcigar.com. Enthusiasts know. Aficionados know. Now you know.
When you're using their search feature, make sure you spell it right. It always helps.
Tim, you are full of you're like a walking issue. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Like you're
it's like a subscription, really. There's multiple issues.
It's more like layers.
Layers, yeah. I'm
like
an onion.
An onion.
Yeah.
You're like an ogre.
Yeah. Well, more interesting than me doing this show and being supposedly one of your friends.
Well, yeah. Listen, dial it back.
That might be
dial
your
it back.
fault.
First off, lower your voice.
135 episodes. Can you believe it, James? I never thought that you would get here.
Well, your support is just overwhelming and staggering, Tim. Thank you. I appreciate the vote of fucking confidence.
Yeah. Well, out of 135 episodes and probably pretty close to 100 guests and some being on the show multiple times, when Nimmer came on and he was introduced and you're like, hey, welcome to the show, Nimmer. His response, and I don't know if somebody else has done this, but he was very cool, calm. What's up? And that just set the tone for the rest of the show. And I was trying to think, and maybe you would know, what are some of the best ways that guests have come on the show and just acknowledged that you're inviting them on?
You know, to be honest, Tim, that's a really good question. And I think the best way for me to answer it is I don't know. I don't. I'm always just shocked when guests want to come on.
Well, yeah, so and then myself and all the listeners as well.
Yeah, and then I'm doubly shocked when, like, you know, I ask a guest to like be the co-host, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, that sounds like a good idea." So I don't know how to really answer that because I don't remember, because I'm old and Alzheimer's is a thing. And also just I'm always just humbled and honored that they come on, and I don't look for the guests to set the tone. I didn't know this was going to be like an anniversary show. It's only 135 episodes. Like, calm down.
It's a very odd number too.
All right, I'll calm down.
But I'm always humbled and honored that they're on, and I'm just they don't set the tone. It's up to me and Nick to set the tone. And then to kind of keep things moving along and have a good, fun conversation. And I think we've been able to do that for 135 episodes.
Give or take.
Nope. Well, yeah, I guess there were probably some non-numbered ones in there, something. Maybe we're at 140.
Okay.
No, I don't think. No, I think it's a fairly accurate.
Yeah,
count.
yeah, I think it is.
Just some of those early episodes.
I said give or take, like some maybe were flowing and some were not flowing. Maybe.
I could think of a couple. Like, I'm not mentioning names, but they're not anyone that anyone would remember. But I think there's a couple episodes out there where trying to get the guest to answer was like pulling teeth. But with Nimmer, that's never the case. Like, I love having Nimmer on. It's the second time he's been on, and I got to spend a lot of time with him in Florida at the end of July, and it was just an awesome time. It's always fun to talk with him, but to be able to hang out in person, it's always just that much better.
I plan on doing that someday. I mean, I've met him on the show, and I've talked to him on the phone. One of the good guys. I know I say that, but I only say it about the ones that really are one of the good guys. And fortunately, those are the kind of people that I want to associate with myself. And those are the ones I really want on the show, too. I mean, you pick them, James, but the guys I recommend are the ones that I like to hang out with. But
I don't know if that's, I mean, I suppose that's sometimes true as I pick them, but sometimes I'm like, hey, Nick.
Well, then, yeah, I make recommendations, and most of them have been on. And the ones that I recommend are people that I know, and more importantly, that I like. You know, so because it's always fun when I'm like, hey, Nick, I think we're gonna have Nimmer on, and he's like, hell yeah, I like Nimmer. He's one of the good ones, right? Like, or it's like the first time he was on, he's like, I don't think I know Nimmer. I'm like, well, this will be a good opportunity for you to get to know him. And then afterwards, Nick's like, Nimmer's one of the good ones. Yeah, like, we're kind of talking about Nimmer behind his back right now, but not really. No, he's a good dude. He's a good dude.
Well, and you could tell that Nick and Nimmer, they just meshed really well throughout the episode.
Well, when you like somebody, you don't have to pretend. You know.
Well, I wasn't trying to insinuate that you were.
I wonder, like, how many, like, if other guests, like past guests, are listening to this, are they going,
no,
we fucking hate me?
Like I said, nearly everybody that we brought on the show that I can't remember any that I don't like. Let's leave it at that. Because we don't have people that we don't think would be good guests. You know, they could make great cigars, but they may not be great guests. But maybe we eventually have to interview those people as well. But for the time being, we can go through. There's enough people out there where we have a big pool of people we can choose from. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I think the biggest mistake we've made, Nick, is doing an after show.
Yeah, well, too late now.
Oh, too late. So sad, fucker.
We need to give Nimmer another shout out or a congratulations on becoming a new father. That was very interesting. He mentioned that he has definitely a lot less time to smoke. And then I thought of you, James, when you brought your daughter into the family. You decided, I'm going to make more time to smoke. So I thought that was two completely different spectrums there.
Well, thanks for throwing me under the bus, but that's not technically the case. So, she was an infant, like literally could not survive without human supervision. I hadn't started smoking yet, and it wasn't until she was over a year old. I think she was, let's just say I started to. So she was maybe like 14, 15 months old, and that's where I was like, Dad has been doing this for 14 or 15 months. Dad needs a break, because she likes to scream. So
right. What did he say? The child is just realizing that they're a person and that they need attention.
Yeah, there's like Nimmer tells a funny story, and I don't remember if he told it on the podcast or not, but like he was telling me, he goes, it's funny. He's like, he will cry and he will scream because he's hungry. And then you'll give him the bottle and he'll just look at you and go, no, I'm going to scream. I'm going to keep screaming, and I'm going to look you right in the eyes while I do it, because you fucked up and you didn't have it ready. So now you get to, and it's like he knows, right? So Nimmer tells this great story, and it does feel like that sometimes as a parent. So I before, his wife had given birth, he had told us that offline that they were expecting, and I told him how it was going to change his life and it's going to be amazing, and like get ready for sleepless nights. And he's like, oh yeah, no, everyone says that. And I know Lou was telling him the same thing, like, hey, sleepless night. He believes this now. I don't think he believed this before. He believes this now, and it has certainly curtailed his time to smoke and his ability to have as many cigars as he wants throughout the day. But I don't. The trade-off it's a pretty good trade-off.
Isn't that the way it always is, though? People, they've been through the experience. They know how something's going to be. They tell you, hey, prepare for this, prepare for that. And you're like, yeah, okay, sure. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking, maybe it'll just be a little bit different. And then lo and behold.
Well, I wonder if the cigar industry is like that. And Nick, you would be the guy to ask, right? Because people come to you all the time like, hey,
sure.
what can I expect? I'm going to start my cigar business. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And you give them advice, and you're like, maybe you should watch for this. Maybe you should think about doing that. Like, how often is it? Because I often think, because I'm the same way, but I'm also just an asshole, is that, that happened to you. It's not going to happen to me. Right? Like, if that happened to you, it's not going to happen to me. I'm smarter than that. But then inevitably, I'm an idiot, and it happens to me.
Well, you don't know until you do it. I can only talk about my own experiences. What I did is studied as many people as I could, their stories, their journeys, what they've done, watched for many, many years. Even though I wasn't in the business, I started smoking in the early 90s, which I've mentioned before, of course, on the show. And when I do things, I deep dive, man. When it's a hobby, and I really thought I knew everything. And the one thing that I thought I was doing right, which is probably what everybody else tries to do, because when you start out, well, at least when I did, nobody was like, hey, buddy, let me help you out. Let me give you some pointers. Let me tell you how it's done. To be perfectly honest, everybody was like, figure it out, man. That's pretty much I kind of, maybe that's because it's me, but anyway, I didn't get those warm fuzzies from people really. I did meet some other people very quickly after I got in, but the ones I knew initially was like, okay, do it. Like, I didn't get any, hey, great, go do it, no positive encouragement. And I can see why that was as well. But I think the biggest mistake I did, and I still think, and if anybody asks me today, I would say You know that phrase that, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Well, most brands do the same thing over and over, and you follow the rule, and I just think going into it now, everybody's got their individual story, their individual, click or whatever they want to go for, their market share, whatever the case may be. But if you try to do it the way it's always been done, I don't see a different result. And pretty much every retailer out there sees it that way as well. Oh, there's another new brand, you know what I mean? So they'll do what they normally do. So my biggest advice is do it your way, do it differently. But most importantly, and I've said this many times and I will always say it, is have fun doing it. Because at the end of the day, whether you make money or not, the reality is that I don't know what the actual percentage is, but the majority don't stick around past 5 years. 5 years seems to be kind of the turning point where people have come and, gone. But if you had fun for those 5 years, it's another experience that, for your belt, or for, at the very least you could say, hey, I tried it, it didn't work out, but I had a lot of fun doing it, and now maybe I have 2 million cigars that I have to smoke myself, or whatever the case may be. But the reality is, have fun doing it, but do it differently. That's my advice, and that's the advice that I give out.
Well, do you think it takes, or some companies, 5 years to figure out whether they're going to make it or be around for a while? Because it can take 3 years or even longer to perfect the blend that you're trying to get to market.
Well, I mean, look, the Astronomia is certainly a case where it took 3 years to get it to market and perfect it and get it where he wanted it 100%.
And he took a little bit of blame for that, because he even admitted that he is a perfectionist.
Yeah, and I think most people who want to go into, or do end up going into business for themselves, and it doesn't matter what industry, are a little bit of perfectionists.
But I would say that the time you're talking about, it took them 3 years to get it. I don't consider that part of when your clock starts. That's all pre stuff. There's people that maybe work on their company, their business plan, their blends, whatever they need, the foundation of what they're going to do. Maybe some of them do 5 years, or some just come out of the chute. But, the more preparation, I think, is a better way to go. But I think there's a lot of people that have done zero preparation and have been successful at it too. So again, there's no exact formula for that. But yeah, I wouldn't say 3 years out of 5, Tim. I would say that starts day zero, the first day he releases his first cigar. That's when the clock starts in my playbook anyway.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And that's what I was getting ready to say, is he's been around for 8 years, 5 years, something like that. And he's only had, the core release, the core lines of the Nobility, the Neoclassic, and the Messenger. Something for everybody, like strong, medium, and mild. But, this is something different. The Astronomia is something special. It's something that he's worked on. And so he's got 3 years of that. But yeah, he's been around. He's the biggest, biggest brand you've never heard of.
I was just going to ask you, you have this phrase for Valacari, and I couldn't remember what it was, but that was it.
Well, so the cigar industry is one of those weird places where people who think something is small, if there's something in the industry that they think is small, odds are it's not nearly as small as you think it is. And some of the things that you think are huge aren't nearly as big as you think they are. So it's this weird dichotomy, and I'm not naming names, and I'm not going to say anything disparaging about anybody, but there are things out there in this industry that people are like, oh, he's got to be huge. Like, they got to do a ton of business, and they don't. That's not a thing.
And on the flip side, I can give an example because they're no longer in the market. Agio with my good friend Zev, when he was working for them, when they entered the U.S. market, this company is huge, overseas. So he would go into stores, he would go into shops, and everyone's like, "Oh, what are you guys, new? You know, how much business can you?" Like, they had no clue that these guys could eat up 10 of their top, 20 brands. But it's all perception. So you have to get past that step. I've had that same problem myself. People hadn't heard me. And my favorite line is, just because you haven't heard of me doesn't mean I don't exist somewhere else. So a lot of people tend, it's that old saying, judging a book by its cover. If you hear about it a lot, that means it's huge, and it could be all smoke and mirrors. And then there are the big guys that are actually doing a lot of business they've never heard of. So, I don't know.
Do you think the average consumer in America completely forgets that there's a whole market worldwide?
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Without a doubt. Part of that is because we have alienated ourselves on purpose from the Cuban market. Not like the consumer hasn't on purpose, but the government has.
Right.
And so we are, and look, the rest of the world, like when you take a look at how many countries are in, the Western Hemisphere and how many countries are in the Eastern Hemisphere, it's a vast difference. And those countries have legacy. They've been around a long time. Everything in the Western Hemisphere is relatively new. So we don't have that history. And after, a few hundred years now, we've kind of lost that connection to that history. So yeah, I think we are rather insulated. And we look at the cigar industry, American consumers look at it from a very insulated perspective, and don't really care. It goes back to politics too. Like we don't care what happens in the UK for the most part. We're not following
or anywhere
what
else.
Happens to the, we're not following what happens to the king is what I'm saying. Yeah. Right? We don't care what happens to King Charles. It's like whatever.
Yeah.
But the rest of the world kind of watches. Like look at soccer, football they call it,
footy ball,
right?
Otherwise known as football. Yeah.
Yeah. It is the largest sport on the planet. It is the most popular sport on the planet. And most of us here in the U.S. are like, yeah, I don't give a shit. Give me American football. Give me baseball. Give me basketball. And soccer, as we call it here in the States, doesn't do that well. Now, it's starting to change a little bit. I know lots of people who follow.
It's growing. It's growing.
Yeah, but it's not. It's not what football is. Like American football, it's not what baseball is. And I don't know if it ever will be. So yeah, we are pretty insular and we're pretty self-focused, if you will.
How about another avenue with the same thought? You look at a company and you say, oh, this is the cigar that they produce, they make. You don't, unless you're one of those people that is digging down and doing the research, you don't realize that manufacturer might be blending cigars for several other companies out there.
Well, Nick can probably speak to this a little bit better, but I think there are some factories that don't want you to know that.
Sure, that's what I'm saying.
And there are brands that come out of factories that would rather you not know what else is rolled there.
Which makes sense, but I mean, if you really dig around, you should be able to find out, right?
And there's factories. Well, some of them are pretty good. There's some factories that roll a shitload of cigars that are being sold everywhere and maybe here, but generally either directly for the online houses and a lot of other brands overseas. And I'm talking in the millions, and you've never heard of them. And they do very well. And if they try to launch their brand here, people will be like, who are you? But yet they make millions of cigars a year, and the people that own these factories do very well. But again, perception here can't be that great. They're new. But they could have been around for 20 years, and there are some that have. So it's, yeah.
So how many approximately, cigar manufacturers exist today?
Jesus.
Well, I'd have to look it up on Wikipedia or something. I don't know.
Okay.
I would say a lot, but it changes literally daily. And then there are some that are not real brands. As I mentioned, a lot of the online people create brands, create bands for, there are certain companies like these factories that's all they do. I mean, if you look at AJ Fernandez's history, how he started, he was a guy that went to Nicaragua from Cuba, and another guy, his original partner, found him and had him start making cigars for CI. And his cigars were definitely on a different level, which is why he got noticed. He came out with the Diesel and the San Cristobal and some other cigars that he made for them, and they're still around. But he was making, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, I don't know, before he ever launched his own brand. And then the brands that he launched, I don't think a lot of people even remember them or know them. There was a brand, called San Lotano. I think that was his first brand. Does anybody still remember that brand? It's still being made. It's still kind of out there. But there's a perfect example where I think AJ reinvented himself. Once him and his partner separated, AJ went back to doing what he does best, is making cigars. So he focused on that. I don't know how it happened. Did he reach out to outsiders? Did he reach out to General? I don't know. But next thing you know, he's making cigars for everybody, and then he's the golden boy. And, I think he deserves that. And he makes a lot of cigars and a lot of brands for a lot of other people. So, everybody's got their advantages and pluses and what they do well. And I think that's what you should focus on and figure out the rest to put the other elements in place.
And I think one thing to keep in mind here is when people hear us talking about this and they're like, there's so many manufacturers, but there is a very finite amount of tabacaleras, amount of factories. What you have to keep in mind is, and we're so far removed from the 200 hands that it takes to, we've all heard that, right? 200 hands is what it takes to get from seed to shelf.
Yep. You guys talked quite a bit about it during the episode.
Yeah. It is that these factories can roll quite a lot every day. Like, let's just take Nick's factory. Let's ask Nick, Tabacaleras de Costa Rica. How many cigars can they roll in a day?
I know we do just about close to 6 million cigars a year right now.
So break that down. 360.
Yeah. That's a lot. Anybody want to do math right now?
Yeah. And they take off, like most tabacaleras, most factories take off like the month of December and like half of January.
Yeah. Or at least a month. About 30 days usually there.
So it's 11. It's 11 months. So it's not 365 days. It's 330 days, give or take a couple days.
But at the same time, James, there's a lot. What's a factory? I've seen many factories that are 2 tables in a house or on a porch of a house, and they consider themselves, and they rightfully so, they're making cigars. I heard the last number in Esteli, there was like 80 cigar factories. That's a lot. Now, what exactly is a cigar factory? Like I said, it could be 2 tables, it could be 6, could be 10, could be 500. So there's a lot of factories out there. There's right now a finite amount of tobacco, and more importantly, good tobacco. Dominican Republic, I think, has even way more than Nicaragua.
I still want to talk about this, but it is nothing that pertains to the episode with Nimmer.
It's true. Why are we talking about this?
Well, like this is what I want to like. I have found, Nick, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. You can tell me I'm out of line. Anecdotally, right? Because it's just my experience. So anecdotally, a lot of the cigars, and it doesn't matter who the manufacturer is, it doesn't matter who the factory is, it doesn't matter any of that. A lot of the cigars that I have been smoking have been underfilled to the point where I have to squeeze them to make sure they don't tunnel or they stay lit, and you can just tell that they're underfilled. And it feels like it is industry-wide lately in the last 2 or 3 months. Anything that I've smoked that's let's just say in the last 6 months, it's a pretty good sample size. that are just completely underfilled. And I feel like the industry is, as a whole, not calling anybody out at all, as a whole, they're starting to cut corners. And I don't know if it's to save on tobacco costs, if it's to save on labor costs, or what it is, but something seems to be going on.
Well, I think there's definitely some that are doing that. You know, the good ones, you can't. If you start doing shitty work, you're only as good as what your last cigar is. So people will forget very quickly if you start producing shitty cigars. So you always have to keep your standards up. So I would say that there are some factories that may do that. And to answer your question, maybe it's to develop, to keep their costs down. Yeah, for sure. But I don't think so. Can you stop doing that?
We're doing it live.
Yeah,
We're doing it live, goddammit.
I'm being distracted here, and that's why I had to. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
So no, but you can't. But you're right. I found recently there's a lot of cigars that seem to be underfilled, and I think part of it may be, believe it or not, there is a shortage of cigar rollers right now, especially in Nicaragua. There is a shortage of everything, because ever since the floodgates have been opened up in the U.S. to immigrate here, legally or illegally, and I won't get into the political sense of that, but the point is, these people from Nicaragua are coming in droves, and I know, speaking to a number of factories, that is an issue. And that means that if you're talented, your more experienced rollers are now finding jobs in the United States doing anything but that, your training program is at least 9 months for most places. So, and then when you graduate there, you're not exactly the top level, roller. So maybe that's it. I mean, that's just a hypothesis on my part. I mean, I'm guessing that could be a contributing factor. I don't know. But I do know there's a shortage of, qualified, experienced rollers out there, especially in Nicaragua.
And we've talked about that before, you and I have, Nick, on other shows, is that the Nicaraguan rollers are going to Costa Rica because Costa Rica pays a little bit more.
Well, that's been going on since the factory's been there. They pay a lot more, James. A lot more. Let's
a lot more. So it's not just
not
a little
more.
It's a lot
they
more.
pay a lot more. So
Nick's
that's
like my factory pays more than me.
And again, not because we're so generous. I'm not going to say that. It's because that's the law in Costa Rica. There are minimum wages and there's all kinds of laws. I've always said Costa Rica tries to be like the United States with their laws. They really do. And sometimes it's very frustrating with the blue tape and all the paperwork, and it's very frustrating. I can't imagine even more frustrating would be in Nicaragua or the Dominican. But yeah, we have to pay more. So if you could quadruple your salary just by crossing a border, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Quadruple is zero, still zero.
Well, close to zero. And unfortunately that's true. People don't understand. Everybody keeps complaining about the prices of cigars. And yes, there is a trend where it's for the most part rising quite steadily. But at the end of the day, for what is put into a cigar, the amount of hands, the 200-300 hands, and all the time and everything that goes into it, this should be a very expensive product. If this was rolled in the United States, which some are, and therefore you have different prices right there, and there's your disparity right there, you cannot compete. If you had to pay a United States wage for the manufacturer of a cigar, forget about it. It would be ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't think there'd be a cigar under $20.
No, impossible.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be a good one. You'd have to cut your corners somewhere else. If your labor costs are so high, then you'd have to cut it on the quality of tobacco, and you don't want to do that either. You could have the best rolled cigar, but if the material is not prima material, what's the point of that then? You're making really good constructed shitty cigars, you know? So
this is just a thought that popped in my head. It has nothing to do with anything that has to do with Valacari and Nimmer and any again, like it's just we're going down this rabbit hole. Like join us.
That's what this show is.
It's just the rabbit hole. Is that
that's actually what this should have been called.
Maybe. A lot of folks won't smoke Cubans, not because they can't get them, because there are ways to get them here in the United States. Not because they can't get them, but because they have some kind of moral issue with communism, right? Yet they'll turn around, and this is not a criticism of Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Honduras, or anywhere else, the Dominican, anywhere else where cigars are rolled. It's not what this is. But they'll smoke those cigars because they're legal in the United States. But what they pay their torcedores is not what we would consider a living wage here. Now, whether or not it's a living wage in Nicaragua or Honduras or Costa Rica or the Dominican,
it's, believe it or not, it's a mid-class wage. It is
really?
Yeah, it is a mid-class wage. You know, even in Cuba, where they're paid nothing, they're considered, you know, mid-class. You know, again, zero plus zero is still zero, but
zero, yeah.
You know, at least they have you know, talent, and they're getting paid. If not in salary, they get cigars, and then they're out peddling their cigars. So to me, it defeats the purpose. And then you have the government that's trying to fight the illegal cigars being sold on the streets. But where do you think they're going to be sold? You know, they're not exactly, yes, it's a vicious cycle, but yes, the salaries could be more, that's for sure, or should be more in all these countries. Because these are, you know, it's a talent. It's a trade that they should be compensated for, you know, what they do. For sure.
No, I agree. And we always, here in the United States, we always, there's a word, I can't think of it right now, but we make these blenders and these principles of cigar manufacturers, we make them rock stars. We really do. And we idolize them. And I am just as guilty of that as anyone else. I am not excluding myself from that. But it's not just them. There's a whole litany of people behind them that make this happen. And that's, you know, when you find good ones like Nimmer, to kind of bring this back to what we're supposed to be talking about. He recognizes that, and he recognizes those folks that do make this happen for him. And he's very complimentary of all of them. And I think that's what helps set the good ones apart from the bad ones. The bad ones are like, oh yeah, no, I did this, I did that, I came up with the term master blender. Things like that. Fucking Tim's like, wow. Jesus, dude, we're never getting fucking sponsorships from anybody. There are guys like that. And Nimmer's just not one of them. He's like, yeah, no, I do this. And I think that's why he's the biggest, littlest manufacturer you never heard of, right? Is he's not looking for the acclaim, and he's not looking for the attaboys, and he's not looking to be idolized and made a rock star. I'm sure he'd love it if that happened, but he's not trying to make that happen. You know, he's just putting out and making great cigars every day, all day. And he's just keeping his head down, doing his thing, and people are digging it. But like there's no like the launch party that you guys can go look at right now. That's like the most marketing, and his advertising here on this show is the most marketing that he's done, I think, ever. It's just not something that he's that's not top of mind for him. He just wants to put out a good product, and he does. He puts out a great product. It's a phenomenal product.
Well, a lot of the episode was focused around the 200 plus hands that actually touch the cigar. So you could tell that he does put a lot of thought into all those things that happen behind the scenes. And when he even mentioned, you know, or maybe it might have been Nick mentioned, you know, there's videos out there that you can watch to kind of give you a quick glimpse. And I laughed at that because I'm guilty as everybody else. I just look at the video. But then when you hear Nimmer talk about his experiences and the people behind the scenes, it brings more reality, I think, to those little videos that are put out once every couple of years. I mean, would you agree? Or
Yeah, those videos show you how it's done, but you don't really, unless you go. Like, one of my favorite things is walking, the floor of my cigar factory or any cigar factory, and meeting the people that are doing it there and watching them and how. Look, I've considered learning how to be a real roller, like meaning actually sitting down for weeks on end and learning. And then I go, man, but my problem is I want to do it. I want to just have a plug put in and be taught overnight. The amount of hours necessary to really be a master roller is so many, not that it can't be done. Some people probably can never do it, but I think anybody, if you're trained long and hard enough, you could learn at least to be adequate at it. But it's definitely not an easy thing to do. Like, I do makeshift. I make cigars for myself, and it's hard, and they don't look anything like what they're supposed to look like, but at least they're smokable. But
they don't look like the picture.
But what I was saying with the videos is, you'd be surprised, and I'm still amazed, the amount of cigar smokers that I come into contact with, and they really have no clue. They have no idea of what they think a lot, and it surprises me, but a lot don't even realize that it is a handmade product. They don't even know that. I mean, I go, what? They're like, oh, what kind of machines you use? I'm like, excuse me? Machines?
Wow.
It's like, I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. There's a lot of people. I mean, maybe they're not the ones that are listening to podcasts and trying to devour any information they can get about the industry, but for the most part, there's a lot of people that really have no clue, and there should be these videos out there to show, at least get an idea of what it takes. The term fermentation, most people don't even know what that is, and it's like, wow, if you don't know, and there's a lot of people I've had to explain that to, and it's like, if you don't know what fermentation is, then you miss the whole thing, and then it's not just rolling up leaves, and there's so much that goes into it. It's so many different levels, and to make a good cigar, and it amazes me because there are so many great cigars being made today, and there's technology being used now that has not been used even when I first started smoking. It's a different game. However, the core is still the same. It's the same thing they've been doing for hundreds and hundreds of years. Nothing's changed. Maybe the selection, maybe being able to add the right nutrients, to the soil to try to get it there. Maybe the science of watching it and even the curing of them and the barns and all that stuff. And yeah, there's definitely a lot more technology there. But at the end of the day, it's the same process. And if you try to change it, it's not the same, at least not for me. I've been to certain factories that they use machines to stamp out, or split the cigars, and it definitely ups the number of production incredibly. But to me, they taste differently. They do taste differently, and maybe it's psychological, but watching it done in those types of factories, I go, it can't be as good, to actually do it by hand.
I think when I hear somebody in the industry talk about fermentation, it does kind of take me a little bit back, because I think that when I think of fermentation, I think of like wine or beer making, alcohol. Is that because alcohol is so much more socially acceptable than cigar smoking?
I think there's just more people that drink than smoke. So people have heard the term, but it's basically the same idea. The fermentation process is the creation process, the cooking. I call it the cooking. My analogy with fermentation is how you prepare a meal. You cook it. You have the ingredients. The ingredients are the leaves. But how do you get the material, the ingredients to that point? They have to be cooked to get there. And then also the cooking of the actual end product. So fermentation is the process of, making the cigar be the taste, the flavor, and the best it could be of that particular crop. And there's a whole lot of science in there, at what temperature do you turn the leaves, how far do you let it go, the difference between a low simmer of a pot on a stove versus firing it up and cooking it in 30 seconds, or a microwave for that matter. There's all different types of cooking. There are all different types of fermentation. So yeah, fermentation's a very big part of a cigar.
That's actually a really good way of looking at it, is just a method of cooking, no matter what it is. Kind of like
Exactly.
that. I'm going to tell the wife we need to go ferment some spaghetti.
Yeah, okay.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Tim.
He's going to have a comedy show next. He's going to have his own comedy podcast. The
Tim Allen.
The Tim
just
Allen
without the
comedy
Coke,
hour.
cars, or cash.
We call it Kill Tim, except it's just we actually try to kill you.
Yeah. That's how this
It's
show
just
goes.
we just hunt you like Predator. Can we do that?
Yeah, sure, you can. Whatever makes you happy. I'm just gonna say this: I can run faster.
You can. That's 100%.
All right, so let's switch gears here real quick, because you did bring up, James, the Valacari event that is now viewable on YouTube. So you obviously know what's out there, what it was like, but what were some of the things that you saw behind the scenes?
Have you ever been to a cigar event?
He's asking you, James. He's asking you.
Yeah, but I'm asking you because you're walking around with a camera and showing people, like when I go to a cigar event,
obviously you've not seen the footage yet because
no, I
it's
have
not
not.
out. Yeah, it's not
time
out.
travel.
No, time travel's hard. No, so look, we talked a little bit about it at the on the After Dark at the beginning of the month, this month in August, and it was a lot of fun. It was held at Fuma Cigar Social in Tallahassee, Florida, which if you're in Tallahassee, that's the shop to go to. It is just a fantastic shop. They have beer, wine available. No hard liquor, but they've got the beer and the wine, and Marquise and Chuck do a great job. It is a comfortable lounge. It has a pretty well-stocked humidor, including Valacari. And they did do the launch party for the Astronomia. So they did get their hands on the Astronomia before anybody else. And it was fun. A lot goes into any event. And I don't think, and I know we talked about this last week with, not last week, but the last episode with Eddie Guerra from Davidoff.
Yep.
And it was an experience. I don't think it was just a sales thing. Nimmer was up walking around talking to everybody. He did a lot of talking. He did a lot of shaking hands and kissing babies and that kind of thing. There were no babies inside Fuma, just FYI. There were no children. Just making sure everybody knows that. Marquise and Chuck were gracious enough to spend some time with me, which I don't know if it's out there yet, but if it's not, you can go to simplystogies.com and just keep checking for it. But there will be a review of Fuma Cigar Social, a lounge review. And it's a great lounge. And they gave me some time and kind of told me about Fuma and how they got involved with Fuma 3 years ago, and how, they've been making changes and doing some things and trying some new things. And then, I spent some time with Nimmer, and we talked exclusively about the Astronomia. And, it does have Ometepe in it, which seems to be like the new hotness.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone's talking about Ometepe this, Ometepe that. But this is like I said, 3 years in the making. Like Nimmer's been working on this for 3 years, and for all 3 years it's had Ometepe in it, right? At least I think it has. So it's not like it's been something different. They're like, oh, Ometepe's hot right now, let's throw it in there. It's just, and that's typically how blends go, right? Blends don't usually take 3 years. It's usually pretty quick. But sometimes, guys like Nick will tell you, sometimes it takes a minute because you're like, it's just not right. Like I have the idea's there and I can taste it. So he talked a lot about that, and he was able to hang out with a lot of people and kind of preach the good word of Valacari and of the Astronomia. But for a launch party,
just a point, James. That's a very important thing that I think not all manufacturers do. I mean, one thing you can say about, Nimmer is that I've always said when people want to start a brand or they want to have a blend for their brand, if you don't have an idea, and the more you know what you're looking for, the better it's going to come out because you have an exact idea of what you want it to be. If you don't, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this will work. Yeah, let's do this. I hate to say, but that's more the rule than the exception. But if you're razor focused to what you want it to be, then at least you're going to get what you want. Now, whether that's a sellable blend, that goes to be seen on anybody that makes a cigar, including myself. But at least if you have the focus of what you're looking for, and Nimmer definitely does, and the fact that it took him 3 years and it wasn't quite right, and the way he's been doing it, it takes longer, for sure.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about the marketing with Valacari, and like this is kind of his first foray into any type of marketing and any type of trying to get traction for something, and hopefully it worked out for him. And we obviously were there. We did the launch party, which you can go back and look on YouTube. That's still up there for the Lures, the Mean Gene, and I think launch parties should become a thing. And not just because I want to be invited to launch parties and cover it and do that kind of stuff. I do. I really do. If you're a cigar manufacturer and you're getting ready to launch a new cigar, invite me. Like let's do it. We'll live stream it. It'll be a good time. It'll be fun. But it's fun. It is something fun, and it gets people excited for it. And it builds the hype, and cigars are a weird marketing thing, right? Because it's, we talked to Ian from Dapper Cigars at the trade show, and he's like, I'm not doing pre-releases anymore. Like, I'm not. Like, it's just, I'm going to do the cigar when it comes out. I send it out to retailers. Then I send the press release so that my customers can go get it as soon as they want it, right? So the consumer can have it. As soon as I say that it's out, they're like, oh shit, I can go to my B&M and get it. And I don't know if that's going to catch on just because of the logistics of it. So it is an opportunity to build hype before anybody else gets it. Which you can go to smallbatchcigar.com right now, and I'm sure they've got the brand new Astronomia, and you can pick it up there. Use coupon code Stogies, 10% off plus 5% bonus reward points, and always free shipping. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I hope other manufacturers do it. Talking with Nimmer and with Lou after the fact, and just how did you guys think it went? Was there anything I could do better? Is there was there something you were looking for that didn't happen? Is there, like, looking back at it, is there something you're like, oh, maybe this will go better? And they were both like, yeah, no, it was fine. This was perfect. This is exactly what we wanted.
So does a launch party have to happen before the cigar goes out, or can the launch party be on the day the cigar has hit the market? I mean, would that make more sense to do it that way?
That's part of the reason that we have not released the launch party. We've worked with Nimmer on this up to this point, which it's, August something right now while we're recording this, is that Small Batch doesn't have it yet. Right. So for whatever reason, Small Batch doesn't have it, and some of the retailers don't have it. And so, no, you can do the launch party and you can record it and put it out later. I don't know if that's super important, or you can do the launch party and put it out right away and build hype. But if you're trying to point people to a place to get it, like a specific place to get it, you want them to have it before it goes out. So yeah, that's why it's not out yet. It's because at this point, Small Batch doesn't have it. And that's where we want to point people to go to get it.
Right, which that makes sense in our situation. I was just thinking about that because when you mentioned Dapper and he's not going to do the launch parties anymore.
Well, no, not launch parties. Not launch parties. Pre-release.
Oh, the pre-release. I apologize.
Yeah, he's not going to sell pre-release. He's just going to be like, I have it. Do you want to buy it?
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Do you think that? And I know you talked about this at the After Dark show. But does should media be covering the launch parties?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that sounded very confident. Just to let you know,
that's a confident. I don't know. Is what that was.
Yeah, but what's your opinion?
Well, my opinion is yes, but my opinion is also tainted by the color of money. Because it's not free to cover these things, right? We gotta travel, we gotta go, we got set up, we've got all kinds of expenses that need to be covered. So obviously we would want to partner with whoever wants the launch party covered to make that happen. However, if you are really excited about a release, and I think Nimmer was super excited about this release because it's his first addition to the core line in years. Like he's like I said, the Messenger, the Nobility, and the Neo Classic. I don't think I'm missing one. I think that's it. So he's adding this to the core, the Astronomia to the core. So that's big. That's big news. That's exciting for his brand. I think when manufacturers add something and they're excited about it and they really believe in the product, yeah, why would you not have a launch party? Why would you not want media there? And the idea came to me, and honestly, I need it, like, full disclosure. I think it was more Lou's idea than my idea. Like, Lou Cross was like, why don't you do a launch party for the Mean Gene?
He does have a lot of good ideas.
Like, he is a good idea fairy, where Randy's a bad idea fairy. Like,
right.
Lou is a great idea fairy, and he's like, why are you not doing these? And I'm like, I don't know. That's a good question. And upon further review, it is a good idea. It's a great idea, because what it does is it allows the manufacturer for a product they really believe in to have hype. And I remember I was randomly, because I'm getting ready right now to go to the Rocky Mountain Cigar Fest. I think I mentioned that at the top of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And the first year I was there, I went by myself, and Nick Melillo was doing a party. And it wasn't a pre-release party, or it wasn't a release party, or it wasn't anything. It was just a party at a place. But the second year that I went, this was just random. I walked into a shop with my good friend Randy, who I've talked about on the show several hundred million.
Bad idea, Fairy Randy.
Bad idea, Fairy Randy.
Yep.
Walked into a shop, and it was just random. And they're like, "Oh, are you here for the event?" And we're like, "What event?" They're like, "Well, Nick Melillo is going to be here tonight, and he's launching the Olmec." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I've heard of that. Thanks, Half Wheel." Like, I knew I'd seen the press release. And I'm like, "Oh, that's launching today here at this shop?" They're like, "Yeah." So I was able to get my box on my hands on a box of the Olmec Claro. Randy bought the Olmec Maduro. I had Nick sign the box for me. It's sitting up there somewhere, and it was a great experience. And I got to be one of the first people that consumers that got to smoke that, and I really fell in love with that Olmec Claro. And when Lou said that to me, that's where my mind first went, was, well, why wasn't anybody covering this? It's, number one, it's Rocky Mountain Cigar Fest.
Right.
So media is already there. Like, I don't go as media. I go as me. It's my one event. It's my treat to myself every year for doing a good job for you guys. Or let's just be honest, probably a mediocre job for you guys. But it's my treat. Yeah. It's my treat. It's a treat to myself for all of the work that I put in every year for you guys. And I don't cover it. I don't, and work. Like, I don't cover it. I just go and I have fun, and I buy cigars, and I talk to my friends in the industry that I know. Miguel Shadell, Andy Yaffe, Brian Matola, Sebastian from Cavalier, the folks at McAuliffe, Amanda, when she's there, Rick Rodriguez, Sarah Rodriguez. And I just get to talk, right? And then I sit down with usually Randy or Eric, may he rest in peace, and bullshit for a day, smoking cigars and having fun. And then we go visit lounges and just kind of do our thing, right? Why didn't anybody cover that? That's a perfect way for some of these guys who are there. And I'm not going to mention the guys. You can go to the Rocky Mountain Cigar
Right,
Fest.
especially if you're already there.
You're already there, right? Why are you not live streaming this and getting publicity for that? Well, the answer is because the manufacturers aren't paying you to do that. So how it's a new concept. It's a new thing that Lou kind of came up with. I hope it takes off. I hope manufacturers like, that's a really good idea. Why am I not leveraging media in this way? And I think I honestly think that this is just an untapped space in the media space of the cigar industry that hopefully will take off. It's one thing to send a press release, right, and have Half Wheel cover it. But talking to Charlie last year at the end of the year, he's like, yeah, Half Wheel is mostly industry insiders. Like, it's people in the industry who follow Half Wheel and read the press releases. It's not anybody else. And we know Coop does press releases, and we know Smoke and Tobacco does press releases. We don't do press releases. We are an infotainment show. That's what we do. We bring you information in a somewhat mildly entertaining way. Emphasis on mildly.
info@simplystogies.com if you're interested.
If you're interested, yeah. But like Nick, what do you think? I'm more interested in what Nick thinks about this kind of a thing, because he's a manufacturer. Is this something that you would even entertain? If you had a new cigar coming out that you're really excited about, Nick?
Yeah, I'm listening.
If you had a new cigar,
he says I'm doing this show, I ain't paying for shit,
coming out that may or may not be in the background somewhere, would that be something that you would be like, you know what, that's not a terrible idea to have media cover?
It's not a terrible idea, but I think, again, we could be the groundbreaking, or things could be changing, but the way things are done, as you mentioned, people like Ian do it differently with their pre-releases. Some people like to chum the waters and get the word out. I'm excited about every cigar that I come out, some more than others, but they're all my babies, and I want them all to succeed. And everybody's looking for the next greatest. Everybody wants, hey, what's new? What's new? That's something we've droned into the consumer mind, which it's a double-edged sword, and I could talk about that forever. But for instance, the Olmec, did he need to do a press release, a launch party? No. He was back ordered like 5,000 boxes within his first few months. So I would say no, he doesn't need to do that. I don't think they're really necessary for some brands. Some brands it would definitely help. It would help all brands, let's be honest. But some brands don't need the help or don't want the help, or I think it's not a bad thing. I think launch parties, what I like to do is I like to reward my better shops, the ones that have been supportive of me from day one, that are behind me. And, listen, there's all kinds of shops that every manufacturer has. There's the shop that buys a couple times a year, and then there's a shop that buys every month. So the guy that's behind it, to your particular brand, and Nimmer has those, and everybody else that's in the business, go to those guys and say, hey, you're the perfect shop for this. And I've done different types of events with shops, where I get the consumers, the people that love the brand, to get behind it and feel like they're a part of the cigar. And I think that makes a difference, to get people, hey, they feel special. They're the first ones that are smoking it. If they have input, I've done some where I've done input, try two different blends and see which one you prefer. I've done all kinds of stuff in the past, and they've all worked with different shops. And I love the support I get. I love the feedback I get. And then you get the shops. If a shop says to me, well, yeah, let me try it, I go, no, and I hang up the phone. And not to be an asshole, but if you think at this point that my cigars don't merit being on your shelf, or a new blend is, that you won't even take a chance with, then no, you don't need to smoke it. And I'm not going to send you a cigar. But there's the guys that no matter what, yeah, send me. There's people that say, yeah, send me 10. And I'm like, no, I'll send you a couple just to kind of chum the water, with. But, do you need it? Everybody's at a different level. I don't think it hurts. That would be my answer.
I think you brought up a really great point, Nick, in that it's not just for the manufacturer of these launch parties, right? Like you said, you want to reward your B&Ms that have supported you and are great champions for your brand.
I think that's what these launches are for, is for the retailers, not even so much for the consumers. It's for the stores that are really behind it, your retail partners that are behind your brand, that support you thick and thin, and those are the ones you're trying to reward. Eventually, look, sometimes it helps. Everybody wants what they can't have. That's another big phrase of mine. And it happens to be the American way. And I think the world, when something is less available, more people want it. They scramble, they try to find it. So, it doesn't hurt. It's not good. I mean, there's the other side of the coin. It says, no, I want it to be available and I want to sell as many as I can and to have it accessible. So there's that side of it. I say eventually everybody will get to it. You know what I mean? And if they have to wait longer, or if they don't want to, just wait longer. Just wait longer, or don't buy it.
And that's the thing, right? So with Nimmer, it's small batch has supported him for years, and so does the launch party. We don't release it until small batch has it, and they're ready to take orders, and we push people to small batch, right? And they're a great partner with us, and Valacari is a great partner with us. So it was kind of a match made in heaven. And with Lure, it was call the Humidor or call Boll Weevil, right? Boll Weevil Fine Cigars, or the Humidor Fine Cigars in Dothan with their sister shop, and order the Mean Gene. And we had lots of people call in, even after the fact, because it's evergreen, right? It's on the internet. It's always on the internet. So they'll get residual sales from that, for hopefully a year or so before people stop watching the video. And then, so you do want to support those shops. And I think that's what launch parties really are for, is to support that shop. Nick made a really great point. And as long as those shops are set up to take orders over the phone, right? Or right, online orders, it makes sense. In my opinion, it makes sense for a manufacturer to team up with one of their great supporting B&Ms, give them a little plug, right? A little shine, a little how's your father.
And then you have to, spread the wealth. The problem is it kind of shows favoritism, but again, those are the shops that supported that manufacturer. So that's why they're getting it first,
Well, and it kind of incentivizes some of the other shops that maybe didn't go as deep with you. Right? Like, well, look, if you want to do this, you put in this order, we'll have the event and we'll have Simply Stogies there, and Simply Stogies they're going to push, sales to you. So I feel like, again, like, not to bring it back to the beginning of the show, but they're like an ogre, onions, layers. There's layers to it. There's layers. Just like there's layers to Tim.
Many layers. That you like to peel.
And they're all terrible.
Yeah. I wouldn't eat an onion raw. Anyway, one last thing that we always do before we get out of here, one of the questions that I love that you two started doing on the show is asking the people that you're interviewing where they see themselves and or their companies 5 years from now. We learned two things. One, Nick is never going to retire. He loves what he does.
Yes.
And two, Nimmer has he's holding the title for the best answer right off the cuff. Do you remember what it was?
I don't remember what I had for
hopefully big enough to not have to do Simply Stogies.
He, every time Nimmer comes on, like, we get this huge bump in numbers. Like, he's just got this massive following. I'm just humbled and honored that someone like Nimmer Ahmad would come on the show, spend his time, slum it, as it were, with us. He's a great human being, and I love him to death.
Couldn't have said it better.
It's funny that you say that, because we had this conversation, and Tim will remember this. I asked somebody very recently, what's your 5-year plan? And they didn't have one, and they've never had one. And thinking about that over the last few days, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't
about not having a plan.
About not having a plan. Like, Nick, do you have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 1-year plan? Do you have those?
Yeah.
I feel like if you don't know, you can
but
want
it
to be
doesn't,
somewhere in 5 years.
It doesn't matter. In some cases, it definitely matters, and there are people that are more specific about their 5-year and 10-year plans. I would think that companies like McAuliffe, really have it etched in stone. And then the one that comes to mind that I think had zero plan and literally became one of the top boutique brands in the industry was the Leaf by Oscar. I know for a fact Jim had no plan whatsoever, and he'd be the first to say it. He was like, he just went with the flow, and his whole life has been about going with the flow. And you know what? It's kind of worked out for him. You know what I mean? He's doing exactly what he wants to do, and he's been doing it ever since he's gotten into the cigar business. He doesn't do anything he doesn't want to do. He doesn't go to any shops he doesn't want to go to. He doesn't do events that he doesn't want to do. He does a lot of them, or he used to. But again, that's because he likes doing what he does. But he would be the first one to tell you he never thought that the Leaf by Oscar was going to be any more than a shop store blend. And look where that is now.
Wow.
So there's that. And there's people that have every day planned out for the next 5 years. And who's to say, sometimes one works better than the other. Depends on the person, depends on a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, there are definitely wrong ways to do it. But there are a lot of right ways to do it. And not every path leads everyone to the same destination.
Well, that's definitely a true statement. Everybody's different. Every brand is different. Every person that's in the cigar business, everybody, people come, back in the day, if you weren't Cuban, then you weren't a real cigar maker. And then it was like, okay, if you weren't Latin, you weren't a cigar maker. But today you have so many cigar makers that are not, that it's not before. Like, when Rocky first came on the scene, everybody totally dismissed him. What? An Indian? He's not even a gringo. He's an Indian. But look where he's been in his success. No, I'm not kidding you.
Yeah, no, I get it.
He was shunned. He was shunned, in the beginning. But let me tell you something. You could say a lot of things about Rocky Patel, but man, was he out there every day. He's the king of it. I mean, 300 days a year, he was on the road, for so long. He's the biggest overnight success that took, he's been doing it for 30 plus years, more than that, and hugely successful and rightfully so. He deserves every bit of it. He had the passion and he had the drive, and even at the age that he is now, he's out there and he hasn't slowed down. He does what he needs to do. So I give him a lot of credit for that. And there's people that don't want to do that. I've seen people, sadly, that do events or shows, and they don't even want to talk to their consumers, the people that are smoking their cigars. Why bother going? Why do you even bother doing it? But again, some of them because they're family members and they just feel like they have to be there and it's just going to happen anyway, and they're probably right. And there's others that if you're at that point where you don't even want to talk to the consumers, the people that love your brand, then your days are limited. Because that will eventually come down to your consumers. You're not following you either. So, everybody's different.
Well, gentlemen, that was a great episode. Very great conversations. I liked it. It was great. James,
I'm glad you
get the shit.
That says a lot, right?
James,
that means
get us out of here, please.
Oh my God, on that terrible disappointment. It was a good episode. Tim, it was great. It was rabbit holes galore. So if you enjoy rabbit holes, you definitely enjoyed this episode. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching, guys. We really do appreciate it. Look, if you would like to join the LE Club, go to simplystogies.com. Click on the right-hand side up at the top, LE Club, and you can join, and you can help support a small podcast like us. Small. $10 a month, $100 a year. That is the minimum. $20 a month, $200 a year, $30 a month, $300 a year. Or you can join a lifetime membership, $500 up front. Boom. And you're done. And guess what? Like, because we went and we did these launch parties, all of our supporters got a 10-pack of cigars, 5 from Valacari, 5 from Lure, and they are enjoying them hopefully as we speak. And so we want to thank our partner, Valacari Cigars, and of course our exclusive online retail partner, smallbatchcigar.com, for sponsoring this episode. Join us next week where Nick and I sit down with my friend Mo Malley from Patina Cigars. We're going to talk about the Oro de Nicaragua and everything else that Patina's got going on, including, I believe, the new LE cigar that he announced, or it's just out. I saw it on Instagram the other day. So join us for that next week. But until then, for Nick and for Tim, as long as Tim hasn't fucked this up, that's where they are. I'm James. Stay smoky, friends.